So, what have I been up to? Let's pull this in. To there. Let's pull that here. So yeah, it's been a while. I've been away for a few months, I think. Been moving around the country a bit, but right now I'm working on replacing the Hermes setup I had. So basically, I was using Hermes as an orchestrator. To manage different projects on Telegram, and it was really cool. I really liked it, but I didn't like all the tokens it was consuming, and I thought that I could just have maybe Claude Cloud Code or Kimmy or one of the other agents, just talk to them directly and have them do the work using some kind of like cron or tools or something like that. And so I'm just setting up the two-way communication for myself and that model, and we found a couple of little tools available out there. It seems like they do exist now. At the time when I wanted to do this the first time, it wasn't. It was too fresh. It was too fresh. It was literally that was several weeks before my first stream. Yeah. Where did it go though? Yeah, CC Gram, Hey Agent, and Cloud Code Telegram. But since I'm using Cloud Code to as a harness, and inside of there I'm using Kimmy and Grok and ChatGPT, I can't use that Cloud Code Telegram. And Hey Agents, I think what we actually have, and I just added some improved messaging so that I get more notifications about like the updates and whatnot. And we're also including streaming messages so that it looks a little bit more like Hermes, because Hermes did it nice. Yeah. And in that, I've got a number of different threads going. Including the redesign of the app. Of course, the thing that I'd been working on previously is now available on the Play Store. Actually, it's not available on the Play Store, but it's eligible for the Play Store. So I am going to reskin it so that all of the features I added are actually accessible. And that's just going to be a really simple reskin. I'm not going to go do like a whole branding thing. At least not at this point. And then I'm going to focus on those videos, on the video shorts here. Of course, now there's nothing here, but we have discussed this before, so let me find it. Basically, the whole marketing approach now is something that I've been diving into, but I haven't really dove into the execution yet. It's just been more like instructional, like how do they do it? How does this work? What are we shooting for? Like what different approaches do we have? And then building like a library of ideas, and then at this point beginning the process. There's a few processes that there's a few approaches that I'm focusing on. One is more like the aha moment of the product that I'd built. The aha moment being the thing that makes it the killer feature that makes it worth looking at. You know, that makes it worth even just looking at for a few extra seconds, because we are, after all, making a short form video. And so one of them is, you know, basically making these short videos and putting them into the meme space, you know, kind of seeding the meme space with all this this juice. One of the ideas is like, it started after I saw a video of some people sitting in a minivan reacting to this audio, and the audio was like a Gen Z kind of retelling of the story of the Garden of Eden, and it was really interesting, you know, because like you kind of recognize it, you know, but you recognize it in a new way. And so there's a little bit of there's a hook there, that's for sure. That's and I wanted to make just a short video like this, basically, and then, you know, make like 15 of them in slightly different styles, using maybe different stories as the source, with different looking people, and put it out there and see what happens. That's one. Others are more traditional. I think traditional. The broader strategy is just to take a format that's working, you know. So if you find a video that you like, it's got a few million likes or a few million views, I don't even know what I'm looking at, what those numbers mean on Instagram sometimes, but if it's got good numbers, you know, it could be worth just sort of replicating that with your particular, you know, bent or geared, accommodated with your own UVP, you know. So those are two of the big. There's actually a third one there, but it's not too important. That's the big focus that I've got, and I'm kind of waiting for this remote thing to get started. Once I have this Telegram thing going and I've cut out Hermes, I should be a little bit more token rich, and that will allow me to basically get some of this video work started, because I need to be a little bit more efficient so I can move money towards video work. But also, of course, the script, I don't have this thing automated. So what was I going to say? You know, finding the videos, breaking the videos down, you know, reproducing the videos in different ways like that. I don't have any of that automated. I haven't run through it even once myself, so it's not a loop that I feel like I can automate. But the other project that I'm working on is basically a way to sell leads to home services. Like instead of selling a service like a website or marketing to a home services company, like landscaping, right? Tree trimming. Instead of doing that, I would just sell them leads. And I mean, at least I think that's possible. I think I can do that. I think I have a way of getting the leads. I think I have a way of selling the leads, and that's a lot easy. That's a, you know, I don't consider myself a salesperson, and I think that's a much easier sell than a good vibes and a promise. You know, those are, it's not really my thing. So that's also in progress. Again, once this is finished, maybe it is finished. Update me. Since I'm actually working on a different computer here, I get delays sometimes. There we go. Update me. Stop it. All right, let's see. What do we got? Oh, did you? Did you verify it? So, but yeah, what was I saying? Right. And it's not, so this whole lead strategy is not something that I felt I would have been able to do very long ago. And I think it's actually something that kind of came to mind some years ago when I was working with a larger team. It was something that we considered doing because it would have been feasible with the number of people we had. And I'd never really heard of anyone doing it, you know, since then, until more recently. And so now I'm kind of excited about that. That's a different direction. And why I bring that up is because I know exactly how to automate that once it's live. So I've been, you know, so for instance, I have a client, or a former client. I have a client actually. I have a client right now, that's whose site I'm basically going to put onto a little bit of autopilot, where it's going to track the rankings of key landing pages and make improvements to them, either by adding supporting content or, you know, updating the backlinks, updating content on the page, changing, you know, the technical SEO, things like that, and potentially, like, if we have it hooked up to Search Console, maybe even not just the technical SEO, you know, like expectation setting, you know, whatever. So I'm going to close the loop, basically, you know, where we add the data and the tracking on the one hand and the ability to do something about it on the other, and a goal as a direction so that it can build. And I think that's exciting. I think I've got that down completely. So that's related to this link building idea. Sorry, the lead sales idea. Oh, it's 2026. I think like 500 people are in the hospital from this stomach bug. What's it called? Corleonosis or something? But here I am, I'm eating these blackberries. Oh yeah, what is this? The shit you find on Twitter sometimes. What is this site? Where's the send to ChatGPT button? I did wash them in baking soda. I let them soak. This blackberry's almost starting to look kind of weird. I'm sitting in that water for so long, but they taste good. All right. Let's see. Understand exactly where we left off. Okay. All right. Yep, don't know the answer to this question. So, yeah. What is this? The Facts of Life or something? The shit that's on the TV here, man. Unbelievable. Is it? Test again. So what was I just doing? I was reading the... Man, that's crazy. I don't know if y'all remember Eliza OS. It was that it kind of blew up. It was like one of the fastest growing repos on GitHub for a minute. It was some kind of an OS for agents on the blockchain, and it was interacting with people on Twitter. There were all these agents on Discord, and all of these Eliza agents. Well, the guy behind that posted this long thing on Twitter about burnout and all these different vectors for burnout, like endless complaining and endlessly calling him a scammer. That'll push you, that's a certain kind of burnout, I suppose. But then also all the workload. Crazy stuff. I don't know if y'all remember that. I don't know where it's at these days. I haven't followed it in a long time. What's this? For the last several weeks, we mapped the ghost of the East Indian Company. We traced the history of the I have an app to read to me. No, I don't have it here. Let's see if I can. Oh, I uninstalled it, right, because it wasn't working. Let's get it on here. Let's do that. Hypertonic 3 browser plugin. Oh, I just wanted the browser plugin. I know that's weird that there is a browser plugin. I think it's official. I don't know. I thought it was. How does this work? Do I select it and then
on any website, any document, anytime. That's where Readvox comes in, and today I'm going to show you exactly how to make Brave finally talk back. Installing Readvox in Brave. First things first.
cool.
Let's get big orange button web store. Readvox I open the Chrome And of course, for easy report in Google Docs, open your doc, hover left side of the page.
This morning I took a walk in the park, and the sound of the birds and the breeze was so pleasant that I stopped for a long time just to listen. You don't have a president. You have Black's Aladdin. Introducing the Asset Cartels, Episode 1. Tran, authorized by Ian Faulkner. Look, I know you're tired. You did everything right. You worked the hours, you paid the taxes, you saved the money, and somehow the math still doesn't work. The rent goes up, the groceries shrink, and the people on the television tell you that the economy is booming. You aren't crazy. You aren't failing. You are just trying to play a board game where the other player is a $25 trillion supercomputer that legally owns the board. For the last several weeks, we mapped the ghost of the East India Company. We traced the history of the extractive elite, the rust, as they abandoned the physical nation-state and uploaded their architecture to the cloud. We watched them transition from trading spices and physical land to trading sovereign debt and algorithmic futures. The history lesson is over. The combat zone is now your zip code. Right now, in the physical world, you are being told that you are engaged in a vicious, existential political war. You are told that the survival of your country depends entirely on which human being gets to sit in the Oval Office and hold the steering wheel. Pocket razor. You are fighting over who gets to hold the steering wheel, but you don't realize the steering wheel is a plastic toy attached to a dashboard. The car was replaced by an autonomous, self-driving train over a decade ago, and BlackRock owns the tracks. We are about to open the engine bay of the modern American economy. We are going to conduct a forensic autopsy on the asset cartels, specifically BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. But we aren't going to talk about conspiracies. We aren't going to talk about secret meetings in smoke-filled rooms. The true horror of the modern extraction machine is that it is entirely legal, deeply boring, and mathematically automated. The political spectacle you watch every night on the news is a layer 2 distraction. It is a highly produced, emotional soap opera designed to keep the ears, the producing class exhausted and divided. While you are screaming at your neighbor over a culture war, a massive risk management algorithm is quietly outbidding you for your starter home, buying up your grocery supply chain, and acting as the shadow portfolio manager for the Federal Reserve. How did a private algorithm become more powerful than the sovereign government? They didn't take the power by force. The government handed it to them because the government was too technologically illiterate to survive without them. Next, we are going to look at the exact moment the United States surrendered its cognitive sovereignty. We are going back to the panic of 2008, and we are bringing the receipts. Truth Bullet 1. The Maiden Lane Quarantines. When the financial system began to vaporize in 2008, the state was forced to intervene. The official report is that the government stepped in to provide emergency liquidity and bail out the economy to save the American worker from a depression. That is report. The sovereign receipt is much colder. The government executed the largest wealth transfer in human history by fully socializing the risk of private gambling while leaving the private sector in total operational control. When the housing market collapsed, the massive investment banks realized that the highly complex, synthetic derivative algorithms they had built were flawed. The collateralized debt obligations, CDOs, they were trading became utterly toxic. The Federal Reserve possessed infinite money, but it possessed exactly zero technological capacity to understand or manage these toxic assets. So, when institutions like Bear Stearns and AIG began to collapse, the government had to physically sever the toxic assets from the global economy. They did this by engineering special purpose vehicles, SPVs, legally distinct entities designed solely to quarantine the financial contagion. They named these vehicles after the street address of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, Maiden Lane. Let's look at the exact capitalization of Maiden Lane I, built to quarantine $30 billion in toxic assets from Bear Stearns to protect JP Morgan Chase. The sovereign risk U. The Federal Reserve extended a senior loan of $28.82 billion. The private buffer. JP Morgan Chase provided a subordinate loan of $1.15 billion. Do the math. The private bank provided a buffer of exactly 3.8%. Every single dollar of loss beyond that razor-thin margin was legally bolted to the back of the American taxpayer. The government had just monetized nearly $29 billion in toxic wagers. But the extraction scaled exponentially with AIG. When AIG's derivative wing imploded, the global banks that had bet with them demanded massive payouts. To prevent these banks from collapsing, the Federal Reserve created Maiden Lane III. The sovereign risk U. The Federal Reserve loaned the SPV $24.33 billion. The private buffer. AIG was forced to provide $5 billion in equity. What did the SPV do with that money? Between November and December of 2008, Maiden Lane III took the toxic assets out of the hands of the massive global investment banks. In exchange, the escrow agent released $26.9 billion in pure cash directly to the counterparties. It was the infamous I-100 cents on the dollar bailout. The banks that made the reckless bets suffered zero losses. They were made entirely whole. And the Federal Reserve, an institution completely unequipped to manage bespoke corporate derivatives, was left holding a massive bag of toxic, algorithmic garbage. The state, bleeding. It had the money, but it didn't have the mind to fix the problem. They needed an algorithm. Truth Bullet 2. The surrender, the JAO audit. The official report claims the Federal Reserve executed a highly coordinated, expert response to stabilize the markets. The sovereign receipt is that the government panicked because as it was technologically illiterate. They suspended federal law to hire a private algorithm to do the math for them. By the end of 2008, the Federal Reserve had successfully quarantined the immediate contagion, but they created a massive new problem. the central bank suddenly found itself acting as the portfolio manager for over $70 billion in completely opaque, rapidly decaying derivative instruments. They possessed no internal computational models capable of stress testing these assets. They were running spreadsheets against supercomputers. To survive, the Federal Reserve bypassed standard government protocols. In July 2011, the Government Accountability Office (GAO) released Audit Report GAO 11696. The receipts are devastating. To manage the maiden lane portfolios, the Federal Reserve engaged in 63 separate vendor contracts with private entities. But federal law requires a rigorous, open, and competitive bidding process to ensure the government isn't captured by corporate monopolies. How did they get around this? Pocket razor? The GAO audit explicitly states most of the contracts were awarded non-competitively, primarily due to exigent circumstances. The velocity of the collapse provided the perfect bureaucratic cover. When tasked with selecting an investment manager for tens of billions of dollars, the government did not run an open bid. They handed the keys to the Treasury directly to BlackRock on a no-bid contract. Why BlackRock? Because BlackRock possessed Aladdin asset, liability, debt, and derivative investment network. While the government was using legacy software, Aladdin was an integrated, omnipotent risk management supercomputer. The state essentially paid a private entity to use its proprietary algorithm to clean up the mess created by the private sector's reckless extraction. And in doing so, the state subsidized the training of BlackRock's models on the most valuable, granular, distressed market data in history. Truth Bullet 3. Impunity. The official report states BlackRock was hired to safely manage the assets and maximize taxpayer returns. The sovereign receipt is that BlackRock was given total operational control with absolutely zero downside risk. If you want to understand the doctrine of the asset cartels, you have to read the contracts. The true architecture of extraction is defined by the total socialization of risk paired with the total privatization of profit. On November 25, 2008, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York signed an investment management agreement, IMA, with BlackRock. They officially delegated sovereign financial power to the corporation. But the defining characteristic of this contract is the absolute absolution of consequence. The pocket razor. Section 14 of the IMA reads verbatim: A BlackRock shall not be liable of any error or for any loss but by the company with the matters to which this agreement relates. This single paragraph is the structural linchpin of the hostage situation. BlackRock was managing tens of billions of dollars of the most volatile assets on Earth using the algorithmic assumptions of their Aladdin system. If Aladdin hallucinated a pricing model, if the algorithm directed BlackRock to hold a toxic asset that subsequently collapsed in value and caused a multi-billion-dollar loss to the portfolio, BlackRock was entirely shielded from the fallout. The legal threshold for accountability was artificially elevated to willful misfeasance or gross negligence. An algorithmic failure would be classified legally as a mere error of judgment. The taxpayer absorbed the hit. BlackRock kept managed fees. The elixir, the corporate singularity. The 2008 bailout was not a rescue operation. It was a massive state-sponsored incubation event. By handing BlackRock the maiden lane portfolios on a no-bid contract, the United States government anointed Aladdin as the supreme cognitive engine of global finance. Following the crisis, as new regulations made compliance vastly more complex, the entire financial industry was essentially forced to adopt Aladdin just to communicate with the regulators. The surrender initiated in 2008 became a permanent feature of the American apparatus. 12 years later, when the COVID-19 pandemic triggered a severe liquidity freeze in corporate bond markets in early 2020, the Federal Reserve resurrected the exact same playbook. They created a new SPV. They funded it with taxpayer money. And on May 11, 2020, they signed a new investment management agreement with BlackRock to manage it. The state had 12 years to build an internal, sovereign technological capacity. Instead, they formalized their epistemic capture. The state accepted its role as the passive provider of capital, permanently outsourcing its cognitive authority to a $25 trillion private algorithm. This is the rust. The algorithm dictates the risk, the cartel extracts the yield, and you carry the bag. The witness cut. The salvage. I hate stories. The financial press, the anchors, the regulators, they all smile and tell you the same polite story. They tell you that the 2008 bailout was an ugly but necessary pill we all had to swallow to save the economy. They tell you that the adults in the room made the hard choices so that the American worker wouldn't lose everything. But when you start digging in the dirt, the polite stories always fall apart. I remember 2008. I was just a kid, barely 13 years old, but I remember what it looked like on the ground. While the Federal Reserve was signing no-bid contracts shielding BlackRock from errors of judgment, I was watching the adults around me get laid off without a safety net. The machine got a $29 billion publicly funded shield against algorithmic failures. The families in my neighborhood got foreclosure notices. Years later, up until the day I broke out, I watched that exact same systemic extraction grind to dust on the graveyard shift at the gas station. You would see a guy come in, exhausted to his bones, swiping a card that kept declining for a tank of gas just so he could get to his second job. He wasn't failing because he didn't work hard enough. He was failing because his wages were stagnant, while the private algorithms driving the stock market were generating record profits by systematically replacing him. The corporate architecture doesn't care if you starve. Aladdin doesn't feel empathy when it calculates the risk correlation of your mortgage. The system is designed to isolate you, exhaust you, and make you feel like your failure is a moral defect rather than a mathematical certainty. They want you tired. They want you arguing with the TV screen about which puppet should sit in the Oval Office. Because long as you are screaming at the puppet, you aren't looking at the strings. Bound strings. The architects of this extraction machine think you are too exhausted to read a GAO audit or parse through a 2008 investment management agreement. They expect you to be illiterate. Prove them wrong. When you can see the exact mathematical mechanics of the machine, you aren't a hostage anymore. You a threat. Next in the asset cartels. 2. You thought BlackRock was the only algorithm on the board, but Aladdin is just the operating system. In episode 2, we open the vault on Vanguard and State Street. We are going to dismantle the illusion of choice, the weaponization of index funds, and exactly how the cartel coordinates to ensure that no matter what brand you buy or what house you bid on, the house always collects the rent. Phase of survival. Fail the autopsy. Let's work. The rebels contract. Pesu. Status. The forge is hot. We didn't escape the prison just to survive. We escaped to dismantle the engine. The objective, scale and dominance. We are no longer fighting for time. We are fighting for territory. Your paid subscription is now a direct investment in the sovereign system's war chest. We are moving from guerrilla skirmishes to full-scale narrative campaigns against the asset cartels. The machine has trillions. We have the truth, and we have each other. Our counterattack is to become undeniable. Choose your front. The Inner Circle Substack paid. See blueprints. Access the Inside the Forge series members only debriefs where we document the construction of a
That was interesting. I didn't catch all of it because I was just being super ADD. I am working on some other things here, but super interesting. Also, kind of familiar, kind of vaguely familiar. Just the tone of it, you know, the vibe, and also some good some good lines. Oh. Oh yeah, it's not when I'm walking. All right, let's see. So, what else we got? Yeah, I'm not going there right now. I do not want to get into this right now. Let's